On the other side of this heavy door, they might be wondering if I've completely lost my wits. I imagine they're quite unsettled, but I can't hear their concerns, nor am I seeking their approval. Facing the trio of anxious people beyond the door, I flashed a cheerful grin, waved, and called out, "Good luck making your way back safely." My name is Karen, a 32-year-old and recent newlywed. My husband and I celebrated our first anniversary not long ago, and we haven't started a family yet. Back when I was single, my favorite pastime was to embark on solo day trips by train during my free days. My friends often questioned, "Doesn't it get lonely traveling by yourself?" But I found a unique kind of joy in wandering at my own pace, unbound by a strict itinerary. Although there was a touch of solitude, the thrill of exploration far outweighed it. I have a cherished travel magazine from which I sometimes draw inspiration for my adventures. As my routine unfolded, I started noticing a peculiar coincidence. Isn't that the same man I saw last week? I thought. It happens so often that one might consider it fate if they were inclined to believe in such things. Initially, it unnerved me a bit, but it turned out he shared the same sentiment. One day, he cautiously approached and said, I'm sorry if I'm mistaken, but haven't we met before at completely different locations?" To dispel any awkwardness, I showed him my travel magazine and confidently explained, "I'm just following the trip suggested here." To my surprise, he revealed the same magazine and smiled broadly. That's how I met Mason, my future husband. Mason was intriguing with his carefree approach to travel, always packing light to ease his journeys, while I tended to over-prepare. He joked, "Nowadays, with everything going cashless, all you need is a mobile phone." Our conversations sparkled with excitement as we discovered our shared passion for travel. We exchanged contact details, and gradually our solo trips evolved into joint escapades. To my delight, I found that sharing experiences made them even more memorable, and local delicacies tasted better when enjoyed with someone special. After about 8 months of dating, Mason proposed that we take our relationship to the next level. I wasn't upset at all. Actually, I felt quite elated. Just 8 months into our relationship, Mason and I made the joyful decision to marry, embarking on what I thought would be a blissful new chapter in our lives. However, this happiness was soon overshadowed by the presence of Mason's parents, Austin and Janet. Living just a 25-minute drive away, they are both in their 50s, with Janet working part-time while both remain active in the workforce. Initially, they visited our home quite often, but over time we managed to find a comfortable balance with fewer visits. Our post-wedding life included regular trips to various tourist spots, continuing a tradition Mason and I both loved. Recently, Mason embraced a minimalist lifestyle, carrying only his mobile phone and leaving his wallet in my care. "It feels so light, I hardly look like I'm ready to go out, do I?" he joked with a satisfied grin. I silently wished he would at least carry his wallet, but it was a small inconvenience. One ordinary day turned unexpectedly tense when Mason, out of the blue, suggested, "By the way, my parents' wedding anniversary is coming up. How about we invite my parents on our next trip?" I felt a sudden tightness at the suggestion, but replied, "Yeah, that sounds great. We haven't seen Janet and Austin recently anyway." Mason, oblivious to my discomfort, didn't notice my strained expression. The following day, when I called his parents to extend the invitation, they were thrilled. I guess I have to give it my best shot, I thought, bracing myself. Honestly, I find it challenging to be around my in-laws. They aren't unpleasant people, we just don't mesh well. I'm quite reserved and prefer calm environments, whereas they are the epitome of high energy, which can be overwhelming for me. The first time I met them, their boisterous enthusiasm took me by surprise. "Nice to meet you. I'm Mason's mom, and this is the dad," they declared with the gusto of stand-up comedians, causing me to tense up involuntarily. Later, when the four of us, including Mason and his parents, went out for dinner, they chose the restaurant. I wondered if it was a favorite spot of theirs, given their enthusiastic choice. When we arrived at the venue, it turned out to be an all-you-can-eat buffet. The idea of meeting their son's girlfriend for the first time in such an informal setting brought a chuckle to my lips. "We've been so anxious today. We haven't eaten anything since morning," Janet said with a beaming smile, her nerves seemingly non-existent. "That's right, and we have to get our money's worth," Austin chimed in, revealing the true reason behind their skipped breakfast. Their loud voices drew some discreet chuckles from other diners, making me feel a bit embarrassed and eager to leave. As I glanced around, hoping Mason shared my discomfort, I was surprised to find he had already headed off to get food. Not to be outdone, his parents also rose to load their plates, seemingly preparing for a long winter's hibernation. Watching them, I wondered, can I become a part of this family? I managed only a strained smile amid their boisterous energy, finding myself barely touching my food, overwhelmed and questioning my future with Mason. However, my apprehensions softened a bit when they affectionately remarked at the end of our meal, "What a wonderful girlfriend Mason has. He may be a bit awkward, but please take good care of him, Karen." Their sincere words warmed my heart. I loved Mason, and despite their overwhelming natures, I believed his parents meant well. When Mason proposed a few months later, I accepted without hesitation, convinced of our bond. Yet it seems I was not as skilled at reading people as I thought. At our wedding, Mason's parents seemed to disregard the solemnity of the ceremony entirely, focusing instead on the buffet, much to my parents' dismay. Mason's brother Brian appeared to be the only one who sensed the awkwardness. Apologizing for their behavior, he confessed, "I'm sorry my parents showed such an embarrassing side. It's really shameful. I learned from my parents that Brian, who lives alone, has a somewhat strained relationship with his parents. They once complained, 'That boy is always so noisy with his complaints.' Just recently, he had boasted about buying several eggs despite a one-per-person limit, to which I had scolded him. Annoyed, he retorted, 'Don't you feel guilty about benefiting yourself at the expense of others?' Hearing this story, I realized the complexities of our new family dynamics. I found myself wondering, isn't that a fair point? What's wrong with expecting a little consideration? My thoughts stemmed from a recent visit by my in-laws, Janet and Austin, to our new home. They arrived empty-handed, which was no issue, but soon they began rummaging through our shelves. "Isn't this the snack they're advertising on TV? I've been dying to try it. Oh, and this one, too." They treated my carefully chosen snacks as though they were on a scavenger hunt. Mason, ever so nonchalant, told them, "If you want them, take them home. That's fine, right, Karen?" I wanted to express my frustration right then and there, but all I managed was a forced smile. It was becoming clear. My in-laws were quite the moochers. Their constant, "I want this, give me that," was wearing me down. In the early days of our marriage, they visited weekly, each visit leaving me more on edge. One day, I couldn't hold back my irritation any longer. "Mason, don't you think there's something off about Janet and Austin? They're kind of overbearing." My frustration boiled over into a full-blown argument with Mason, who seemed genuinely perplexed by my anger. "No, not really. They've always been like this. Don't worry about it," he said, patting my shoulder, which only fueled my anger further. "Are you kidding me? If this keeps up, I'll consider a divorce. Just do whatever you want." My raised voice alarmed Mason, and he quickly intervened to put a stop to his parents' intrusive visits. Whatever he said to them, it worked because our home life became peaceful once again. However, the idea of traveling with them still made me anxious. On the day of the trip, I was taken aback to see them waiting, seemingly ready. "It's been a while. I heard you've been busy with work. Must be tough," Janet said, trying to make conversation. Despite her words, I was far from calm, especially when I noticed something odd. Janet and Austin, where's your luggage?" On closer inspection, they had brought absolutely nothing with them, not even for a day trip. Isn't it normal to bring at least a bag? We wanted to be ready to move quickly, they explained, leaving me bewildered and bracing for what might come next on this trip. As I complained about a sore shoulder, their response seemed all too familiar and only added to my confusion. The trip unfolded just as disastrously as I had anticipated. It soon came to light that the in-laws had conveniently forgotten their wallets, feigning surprise with a, "That's strange, isn't it?" Watching them play innocently, I found myself thinking that it might be best to either cut the trip short or cancel it altogether. Unfortunately, my concerns fell on deaf ears. An exasperated Mason reassured me, "My folks have always been like this. I'll cover for them, but I'll make sure they pay me back." It seemed the trip would go on as his parents laughed and offered hollow apologies. All I felt was disgust. Even after we arrived at our destination, their rudeness persisted. At a store, they complained about the absence of free samples with a loud, "Wow, stingy, huh?" When I, parched, bought a drink and hadn't even taken a sip, Janet asked, "Can I sip that? I'm thirsty too. I can't believe I forgot my wallet." While I forced a smile, an exasperated Mason finally intervened. "Stop it, it's embarrassing. Look, I'll buy you one." Overhearing this, Austin muttered under his breath, "What a stingy woman, lacking compassion." I heard his comment and thought bitterly, I could say the same about you. I should have walked away then, but my stubbornness kept me there. The pattern repeated itself twice more. After seemingly enjoying the first trip, Janet contacted Mason to plan another. When I saw them at the station platform again, a chill ran down my spine. This time they remembered their wallets, but when it came time to pay, Austin exclaimed, "Oh no, this is the wallet I used before I rushed out in such a hurry." Their blatant lie was something only Mason seemed willing to believe. On the third trip, they forgot their wallets again. By then, it was evident that their forgetfulness was intentional. Confronting Janet directly, I asked, "Excuse me, but did you deliberately forget your wallet? You never intended to pay, did you?" My accusation made her face turn red. Austin snapped back, "What a rude woman you are. Apologize to Janet." I stood my ground, fueled by long-held frustration. "No way. Both of you are just too greedy." Caught in the heated exchange, Mason seemed at a loss. Tourists around us watched the spectacle with curiosity. Noticing their gaze, Mason felt embarrassed and finally pleaded, "Stop it, please." Overwhelmed by the whole ordeal, I broke down crying, feeling truly disillusioned with the situation. As the confrontation reached its peak, the in-laws' reaction took an unexpected turn. Janet rushed over to a teary-eyed Mason, and with Austin silently by her side, she said, "I'm sorry, Mason, it was my fault. You're so kind to cry for me." I stood there, bewildered by their melodramatic response. Only one clear thought crossed my mind in that surreal moment. This is impossible. Let's get a divorce. That was all I could think as I watched the tears roll down Mason's cheeks. The in-laws, perhaps sensing the gravity of the situation, lost their previously combative demeanor. "Karen, we know we're often in the wrong. It's Mason's money, but still we've taken advantage of him," they admitted. They repeated, "It's Mason's money after all." Their repetition, dripping with a tone that felt like sarcasm, revealed no genuine remorse. It confirmed what I had suspected. Their forgetfulness with wallets was intentional. Janet carelessly referred to it as Mason's money, but what she overlooked was that Mason and I both contributed to our finances. His salary was only slightly higher than mine, making our actual incomes nearly equal. Recently, every outing with the in-laws ended with them wanting something. "I want to buy this too, maybe some gifts for the neighbors as well. What's that? Looks tasty. Hey, Mason, buy that for me." Their endless demands had led to shockingly high bills on Mason's credit card, and we had been living mostly on my salary for the past few months. At the time of our marriage, I viewed our finances as shared, believing in spending within our means and not burdening each other. What infuriated me the most was Mason's cashless reliance. At our travel destination, he suddenly exclaimed, "What? Only cash here?" He called me over and pulled his nearly empty wallet from my bag, containing just a few coins. "No, I messed up. You know I don't carry cash," he said without any malice. This still angered me, especially considering that I always paid for my expenses. Yet the in-laws probably thought I was freeloading off Mason's income and merely complaining. We split our living expenses, so their accusations were not just unfounded but deeply unpleasant. Watching Mason cry and Austin consoling him, I had a moment of introspection. I was wrong too. Sorry for being presumptuous, I finally said, deciding to diffuse the tension. You guys go ahead on the train. I'll buy some drinks. This decision, though reluctant, was my attempt to restore some peace, at least temporarily. With a serene smile, I watched as Mason and the in-laws boarded the train, their expressions shifting from happiness to panic when they realized I wasn't following. Mason sensed something amiss and texted, "Karen, are you coming? The train is about to leave." As the train doors began to close, I could see the panic etched on Mason's face. He seemed to be shouting something, but I was busy replying to his message. "I'm divorcing you. If your parents are so important, live happily with them. Goodbye." I ignored his frantic calls and texts, pondering whether he realized the disturbance he was causing on the train. His face, visible through the closing doors, shifted from confusion to anger. "Hey, open this door. Are you crazy? I won't forgive you," he exclaimed as if I needed his approval. The in-laws appeared to be yelling too, but their voices were lost to me. Smiling at the bewildered trio, I muttered to myself, "Let's see if you'll make it back safely. Good luck." Then the train departed, swiftly vanishing from sight. Knowing that the next stop was quite a distance away, I felt a mix of relief and defiance. After the train disappeared, I hurried home to pack my things. I decided to stay with a friend where I began to ponder my next steps. Meanwhile, the barrage of messages from Mason continued until they abruptly stopped. Likely his phone had died. He often forgot to charge it overnight, and just this morning he mentioned it was at only 30%. Portable battery chargers are essential, he always said. Ironically, his essential portable charger was in my bag, along with his wallet. As I discussed my situation with my friend, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Brian, Mason's brother. "Karen, I'm sorry, did something happen?" According to Brian, Mason's phone had run out of battery and in his panic he had dropped it, shattering the screen. Unable to contact me, the desperate in-laws turned to Brian, but instead of probing, he listened as I recounted everything about Mason and the in-laws without restraint. As I explained, I could hear Brian's tone sharpen over the phone. From the background, I caught snippets of the in-laws insisting that Brian, known for his articulate nature, would surely outmaneuver me in this argument. After I finished my account, Brian snapped, his voice taking on an authoritative edge. "Hey, you scoundrel, are you stupid?" It was known that when Brian grew truly angry, his imposing demeanor surfaced, and given that he was the one voice of reason Mason and the in-laws could seldom counter, his words carried weight. When Brian reached that point of anger, the in-laws' loud bickering could be heard in the background. I chose that moment to quietly end the call. Although Mason was initially unsettled by the idea of divorce, my firm stance, communicated through a lawyer, led him to reluctantly accept the separation. Brian later confided that the in-laws had a notorious reputation, disliked not only by neighbors but also by those they had known in school. When Mason moved back to his parents' house, he quickly became the subject of local gossip, and now all three of them seldom ventured outside. Mason's colleagues, unsure how to address the rapid divorce, began to treat him cautiously as if he were a sensitive topic. Brian, finding some humor in the situation, shared that the in-laws were infamous even at the local supermarket for their shameless antics, such as demanding discounts on nearly expired items. or asking for freebies due to minor damages. Brian expressed his long-standing embarrassment and disdain for his parents' behavior. It became apparent that the in-laws' actions were influenced by their gambling addiction, often skimping on household expenses, which explained their constant search for bargains and seemingly perpetual hunger. When people ask me about the reason for my divorce, I simply mention it was a fundamental difference in values. To tolerate such behavior would require an extraordinarily broad-minded person, something I realized I could not be. Since the divorce, I've continued my work and even taken on a side job as a freelance writer, inspired by the success of my travel blog, which caught the attention of a publisher. My passion for travel has seamlessly blended with my new writing assignments. Traveling solo seems to suit me best now. Last month, my writing earned me a decent income, enabling me to plan a vacation to a distant resort for some much-needed relaxation. At just 32 years old, I feel like my life is truly just beginning, filled with new possibilities and free from the turmoil that once clouded my happiness.